I went back into Desktop Explorer, being like, okay, I want to, like, I feel like I was clicking and checking out every single thing I could. I was like, but what if I missed something? And I can't believe I totally missed the whole. Welcome to the DL Gaming Podcast. We're going to do things a little bit differently this time than our normal podcast that we do. This is an interview. We're starting an awesome interview segment of interviewing different dev teams. I've got with me the team from Desktop Explorer, which is a really fantastic retro operating system feeling puzzle game, that is horror based. So we're going to start off with some things of just, obviously saying welcome. I appreciate you guys visiting and hanging out with us. It's really cool that a good chunk of us here are local, which is awesome. Did not know that. And so let's get started with some introductions. And tell me, please, what your name is for the listener and what is your role here at Desktop Explorer. Rodolfo, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having us. My name is Rodolfo, and I am co-studio head at Recurring Dream. And for Desktop Explorer specifically, I work on programming and game design.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Carlos Gallegos, also studio head of Recurrent Dream, and same as Rodolfo, I also do programming and game design.
And yeah, hello. So I'm Juan Pablo. I'm writer for the game for Desktop Explorer, and if anyone's also watching, not only listening, you can't see my face, so just picture a big nose. That's me. And yeah.
He got really dolled up for this interview and apparently looked absolutely stunning, which, is really unfortunate for our YouTube video or YouTube viewers. But that's fortunately, we're mostly an audio based podcast. So just happy to have you on, especially the lead writer. That's awesome. So I'm going to start with kind of talking about, obviously this game plays on the nostalgia of the old Windows operating system from, I'm assuming, the 90s. It was giving me a lot of Windows 95 vibes, which I love. So Carlos, do you happen to have a favorite operating system? Is it Windows 95?
I think I'm going to have to say Windows 95.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I feel like for me, again, I'm one of the programmers on the studio. I mean, I was raised with computers, and I feel like Windows 95 was kind of like the first operating system that I was at the age where I can understand what I was doing, and kind of it was my first. The first kind of OS where I have to interact with a computer and kind of develop the language of how human to computers work, and be playful around it because I was growing at that age. So yeah, I think that's probably my favorite.
Do you have a favorite game from Windows 95 era?
Oh, it's hard to tell one. I feel like, and to be honest, I don't have the names fresh on my mind because there were a lot of those old point and click encyclopedias that I used to play a lot. It was I remember one, I forgot the name, but it was one that was just the human body, where you have these pictures of the human body. You can click everywhere and kind of learn all the human body, anatomy, and I think that was amazing. I don't know, there was a bunch, but I don't think there's a clear one.
Yeah.
Probably.
What about you, Rodolfo?
Yeah, I mean, I also really like the Windows 95, 98 era, but if I were to mention a favorite one, I think it'd be Windows XP, which is when I actually started getting into software. I remember using Windows Movie Maker a lot, making Naruto AMVs with Linkin Park music. That's when I kind of fell in love with computer interaction. So yeah, that always holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah. Oh, I love Windows XP. That was probably my favorite as well. What about you, Juan Pablo?
So actually, I think it's Windows 98, which really captured a special feeling in my heart, which was, well, my brother and I, Rodolfo and I, used to visit our neighbor's house, and they had this old Windows 98 computer. Well, it was new at the time, right? And they had this game, this bootleg Super Mario game, and you had to click an MS-DOS logo to open the game, and the command prompt opened, and you had to wait 30 seconds, and then the game started. And for me, Mario lived in the N64, so I was how are we playing this where my dad like uses spreadsheets. Like that was like completely magical, and I thought we were like not hacking because that I didn't even know that word. I thought like we were like bending the computer to our will to play Mario, and it wasn't even Mario. It was like a bootleg Mario, but to me that was the real Mario. It was my favorite, and yeah, I think that's really obscure, but that's my a really special memory.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I mean, it's so incredible too, the kind of nostalgia that comes with this, and I feel that you guys did such a beautiful job of recreating that nostalgia in your Desktop Explorer game. Which I gotta ask, I do remember asking you guys actually this at PAX, so I know the answer, but the listeners probably do not. How were you able to really mimic the vibe of this operating system? And for the listener who might not know, is this an operating system that you guys have built? I feel like Rodolfo and Carlos certainly can answer this one. But
Yeah, I feel like it's funny every time we get that that question because of course not. Of course we didn't build an operating system. That takes a whole lot more effort and actual technical know-how. Which we don't have. I mean, we are engineers, and I don't know, with enough time, I'm sure we could. But we're not trying to do that. However, when we started designing Desktop Explorer, one of the primary things we wanted to capture was the feeling of immersion, and like you could actually use this as a computer. I always liked the idea of the user using the software that we created for the game as a puzzle-solving tool, but also like as a just as a tool. Like I'm reading these I don't know, story points or whatever, and like, oh, I'm gonna bring up a note page, which is our like our notepad equivalent, and like write that down, and I can save it, or I can create my own files, and really utilize the file system as if it were a real computer. It's not full-fledged, like obviously you can't do absolutely everything that you can on a computer, but it tries to get as close as it can without losing that game feel. So yeah, there's a lot of things that took a lot of time, and at times we were like, is this really what we should be doing? We're like designing a whole file system type thing, but the immersion, I think it was really worth it for that.
yeah, I think you guys absolutely nailed it with the immersion. I mean, like even being able to change your wallpaper like while playing and things like that, all of these little details, I thought it was fantastic. And then also too, the chronologue, I think you did a great job with the immersion. And so like, what would you say were some of the greatest challenges in kind of making this game and making the immersion?
I feel like the biggest challenge, and that's something that we keep like iterating until this day when we're like trying to come up with new puzzles, is again we want to make the game feel like it's a simulation, like you're on a computer, and we even think that there's something that's creepy about being in somebody else's computers because a computer is kind of like you have your journal, you have your photos, you get like your cache websites, you have like it pretty much tells a whole lot about you, who you are as a person. And so yeah, I do think that the biggest challenge is kind of like making it feel like it is a computer, but at the same time it is a game. And so, for example, we have mechanics where you need to modify a file, and if we want to make it really feel like it's a computer, like we can give you access to like delete everything. I just want to delete all the files. I don't care about anything. This is my computer, and I just want to delete everything. But like we allow that, players will like get soft lock and they won't be able to progress. But at the same time, if we go to the whole, we want this to feel like a game, there's a lot of like implicit and explicit clues that we need to put there, so it's not as hard. It's like more like a path that it gets really narrow. So it's kind of like finding that middle point where making it feel like you're exploring and you're like going through your files and trying to discover all the secrets by yourself, but without overwhelming players. And you have like 100 tools you can use to solve this puzzle, and it's just so overwhelming because I need to click everything, I need to like explore everything in order to like trying to go through. So I feel like kind of like always balancing that out is being probably the biggest challenge of the game.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could imagine that that would be quite a struggle to kind of dance that line between the story and the writing and also the game aspects and the puzzle. And I think you guys did a pretty cool job of that. I mean, I definitely really enjoyed digging into the files, and you're right, it felt very like you're, in somebody else's computer and seeing the Halibut users, pictures from his family and like the insurance, how many people have PDFs of their insurance and their documents and things on their computer. So I thought that that was a really cool way that you guys approached that and did that. And it kind of ties into my next question of like, what was the thought behind finding the balance of like the difficulties of the puzzle? So like specifically talking about how hard each puzzle is, how are you able to kind of navigate that of, is this too difficult for people to figure out or is this too easy? Would you mind explaining kind of the process behind that?
Yeah, that's probably one of the things that we discuss more in depth, and this happens like every meeting that we have, whenever we're like pitching puzzles to each other, or we're thinking about new interactions that we want to add to the game. That's, I feel like, our hardest challenge, and I wouldn't say that I don't think there's like a clear-cut answer. I don't think we've like solved it or anything, but there's definitely a need for the game and the computer to teach you how to use it first, so that then puzzles can become more complex, more multi-step type, which is what we feel like it's the more fun or fulfilling way of playing. Like when you understand all of your tools that you have and using them all to solve a really tough puzzle, like we want to. That level of satisfaction for puzzle solving is something that we really care about. However, it's not like we're just gonna throw the player in and like, okay, solve the first puzzle. You actually have to do something that you would never think this computer is even able to. Like, I don't know how many people that have played the demo even know that you can save your own files, or all of the menu options and stuff. Some things are kind of hidden away on purpose. Some things we've built to increase the immersion, but people don't know about them. So the demo and how we kind of approach this from the beginning is we're trying to... Oh, did I just lose my internet connection?
You cut off for a while, for like a couple seconds.
Did I just cut off?
You were like, okay, I'm gonna throw another puzzle out.
You have to solve this right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was saying when I cut off, but
just describing, like threading the needle of puzzle making and stuff. That I'd imagine that would be difficult, but I do feel like you guys do a really great job of the puzzle and balancing this, because in Juan Pablo, I want to ask you a few questions about story specifically, because I think that this game has done such a good job of being a nice mix of story, simulation, and puzzle, obviously, and horror as well. So my kind of questions, especially for you, Juan Pablo, being the writer, were you always into horror, or like what are some of the favorite things that you have that you remember from like the horror genre?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your comments. I mean, it's nice that my camera is turned off because you can't see me blush. Talking about horror, I would guess we're something that's really cool about our team is that we're all like really into the same kind of things. We're really into mystery and sort of dark or noir films or games where things are hidden to you, and the more you progress into the story or the narrative of whatever medium you're exploring, a darker secret develops, not always horror, but something like psychological. Personally, I'm sorry if this is controversial. I'm a fan of jump scares because I'm really reactive, and I think that's really funny. But not all of us are fans of that. So our game specifically, we're not into, we're going to make a horror game because it's going to have jump scares and all. Our approach, and my favorite type of horror, and all of us, is something that can be disturbing, but also natural and really something that can really connect with you. And that's not me trying to say, we're going to make a horror game that makes you feel like you hate yourself. No, it's more of a realizing that some certain normal interactions can be creepy, I personally, when I was growing up, Slender was going like Slender Man and that sort of thing was happening. And one day I was using my computer, I was using YouTube, and I don't know why this feature got added in, but when your internet connection sort of faltered, the video showed static, and something like Slender Man was like, oh, if he approaches you, the whole internet and the whole video shows static. So I was like alone in my house, and that happened. And I remember thinking, I'm going to die right now. And like 5 minutes passed, and I don't know what got into me, but I thought this has been like the greatest experience, because we were really into ARGs and things that really feel real. And for a moment, I thought these things were real. So as Jose Carlos said, immersion is really important to us, and I feel like horror has that tool to make you feel like primal immersion in a certain media. But it's not shock value, it's not those sort of things, but it's something we're really passionate about, and we hope people really enjoy it in our game. And yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I mean I think it's really cool the way that you guys were able to weave kind of the horror into it, cuz you're kind of like, "Oh, how are you going to like what, you can't connect to the Wi-Fi, is that terrifying?" You know, right? With the computer. But like you guys have done such a really cool job with the cavern thing. And like I kind of wanted to ask you too, like is the cavern and the cave, is it inspired by a real life cavern or cave that you guys have experienced?
Just as a quick side note, it's funny because this game, there are a lot of psychological aspects of reading stories that, especially Jose Carlos, Rodolfo, and I have been talking about. For some reason, like just as we started developing, we started reading a lot about psychology, and the cavern. There is no real cavern. I'm sorry to say that, but I don't know if I can say that completely truthfully, because the cavern represents this sort of going down into your own feelings. And this game and these past few years for all of us have been really introspective years. So fun fact, the cave, which is the first scenario of the game, was a story I had to pull out of my pocket for a quick demo we had to make. It wasn't really planned, so it really felt natural. I mean, there was no story at that time, and I thought of, well, what can represent my feelings right now? And it was a cavern. That's not me trying to be deep or really sad, but that was the way it is, and we all really connected with it. And all of the story settings we planned for the next chapters of the game and everything really feel that character development for the characters in the game, but also there's a part of them in all of us. So yeah, the cavern is more of a metaphoric thing. So I think I answered the question to myself that yeah, it's real.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes sense though, and I definitely think that it connects to, and it was very smart to have the main user that you're exploring, your uncle, right, his computer, and to see that he had amnesia, which is a really, really smart choice, I think, because it also represents then going into being introspective of yourself and learning more about yourself, which you could say metaphorically is that cavern as well. So then I feel like I have to bring up the mysterious stranger, because holy shit, that character, that character's great. And I feel like I have so many questions that I'm sure hopefully will get answered with like future chapters of this game, right? But I guess what inspired the stranger? Like
I think Juan Pablo has to answer
Oh,
this.
sorry. I don't wanna hold over the conversation, but there's these topics of if you play through the demo and the first character, there are this kind of narrative talking about their own traumas, and there's this experience of seeing their own brother, which has passed away, which is the father of the main character you're controlling, which passed away, and they had this really unfortunate experience where before cremation they had the misfortune of witnessing the like an open casket without embalsamating, I don't know what's the word,
embalming.
yeah, embalming the body, and seeing the withered body of his own brother was a really traumatic experience. So there are these connections that the game, for some reason, there's this stranger which resembles a sort of withered person walking around, and there's these connections the person playing the game can start forming. And why is my uncle, which has amnesia, being so shocked about these images? And fun fact, sadly, our artist isn't here right now to talk about this, but he's a really big fan of body horror, and we feel like we have to like rein him a bit because he's really talented. He's incredibly talented, and he sometimes like gives us some drawings, and we're like, man, this is great. But if I see this like on the gameplay, I might faint. So I think you have to like tone it down. So yeah, it's sort of, there's a narrative inspiration, of course, but there's also this well, our artist really likes that sort of thing, and that's kind of weaved into the story too. So yeah, it's really multifaceted. I don't know how to say it, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense now too. And I mean, it's a very creepy character. Your artist did an awesome job, I think, with all of the pictures, like the torch, lighting the torch, the three brothers fishing, like a lot of the artwork in this game is really fantastic. At least I feel. And so kind of switching gears a little bit to bring everybody in. So like, I'm kind of curious, heard a little bit about your guys' inspirations while making the game and things. What inspires you now though? I think Rodolfo, we talked about a little bit about it before the interview started, but what inspires you now?
Oh man. I feel like, there's very clear inspirations personally. For example, the whole ARG aspect of the game, or the hardcore puzzle solving, or using the computer as a tool to solve puzzles. That all comes from an old internet puzzle game called Not Prawn, which is like this huge puzzle, like hundreds of levels, and it's titled like the hardest riddle on the internet. And back in high school, I started playing that actually with Jose Carlos and other friends, and I got really into it. Like I really tried my best to beat it. It's one of those games that's like, okay, 100 people have beaten it in like a decade. Like it's just really, really hard. Mm-hmm. So that was like the main inspiration from the beginning. That was where using the file system and the computer as puzzle solving tools, that's where that came from. But for current inspirations, I feel like, we've played games that are more of a mystery/detective type. One of my favorite games of all time, Outer Wilds. I feel like when I played Outer Wilds, it just changed my conception of what games could be. In terms of how they surface information to the player, how you kind of can connect the things that happened in the overall story, not only in a linear way, but more in like, okay, I'm understanding this universe through, things that happened hundreds, thousands of years ago, in the case for Outer Wilds. But also like, and we've played this together as a team. Case of the Golden Idol is a big one.
Oh, I love that game.
Then,
yeah,
a huge inspiration right now. And then also, we like to mention the Return of the Obra Dinn, just as like a masterclass of like puzzle design and game feel as well. Obviously not one-to-one to Desktop Explorer. We get compared a lot to like Hypnospace Outlaw, which is a game we hadn't played before doing Desktop Explorer, so the comparison always like surprised us. But they're very similar, obviously, and we've been playing it, and of course we grab inspiration from all the games that we play. So yeah, I would say those are the main ones.
Nice. What about you, Jose Carlos? What inspires you?
So I feel that for me, I had always thought that games have like such like can convey such a unique palette of emotions that it stands out from any other like media. And like I don't take me wrong, like I love like playing like a God of War or like a Last of Us, which is more cinematic, that brings more of like ideas in concept from like the film industry into games. But I feel like all the games that actually make me feel things that other media cannot make me feel, I feel like those are the kinds of experiences in games that I really look and really stands with me. So one of my huge inspirations for the game is kind of like the Silent Hill series, specifically one of the obscurest one, which is the designed by Sam Barlow, which is called Shattered Memories for the Wii. And that one has a really interesting system in where like depending how you're playing and what kind of like things are you looking at, the game changes and evolves alongside with you. There's like a really famous quote that it starts like the moment you start playing the game, which says something along the lines of like the game is playing with you as much as you're playing with it. So I feel like that is like, oh, that hit me so hard the first time that I read it, and I was like, I don't know, like I don't know what to expect. Like I feel like it's such a incredible start in the beginning, and like it drives what your expectation, and like it just drives you crazy, and I feel like that's kind of like it started with that feeling of paranoia, like okay, what's the game doing with me? Well, like what is telling about me? I feel like another great example of that is the actual end, the end of GTA 5. Like you get like this whole psychological profile based on how you play. Like if you're like obeying like traffic signals, like how many people you kill, how many people like you actually stole something from. I don't know. I feel like just taking all like player behavior and using that for gameplay. I feel like that's something that I don't know. I find it's truly unique because at the end of the day, like when you're playing a game, you're kind of like an actor. You're kind of like within the story. You're playing alongside, and I feel like that's a feeling that we're really trying to convey with Desktop Explorer.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's almost one could argue horror to be able to see all these stats of yourself, especially if you weren't expecting to play.
Totally.
But I think it's super cool too. Do you feel that like with AI being integrated into video games these days, do you think the data that's going to come out from that is also going to be exciting or scary?
I'm leaning more towards the scary part, honestly. Computers are gathering data about you all the time. And as programmers also, like, and coming from outside of games, like I feel like Jose Carlos and I have a really good window about like the way that software is used in our everyday lives, and that always makes you a little wary, Try not to have any smart speakers. You know how they say like engineers like they don't want to have like the smartest thing they have on their houses are printers, and even then it's like you're looking at a printer like don't do anything that's weird,
don't connect to that Wi-Fi, you're not getting to the cloud.
Exactly.
Well, Juan Pablo, what about you? What inspires you?
Well, we're all really big Sam Barlow fans and also Kojima fans, like using video games as the one way to portray interesting narratives. But I think something that's really important to highlight also, Rodolfo and I played, I think it was last year or last year, we played Tunic, which is a really important game for me now, and really showed me the value of, I think the one of the creators of the game said the phrase "content for no one," which is a really interesting phrase, which means hiding these details and Easter eggs and everything because I want to. If someone finds them and connects with them, that's great, and I would be really interested in seeing how they discovered these things. But at the end of the day, this game is made by us and for us, and we of course value kindred spirits, and that's what we want to find with this game and all games we made and we play. You want to find kindred spirits. So we really like details, references, and things to hide in the game. So whenever someone finds them and thinks, there's no way they thought about this, and they find it, they're like, oh my God. The reason they think there's no way they did it, I think reflects on them. If I made this game, I would have hit something here. And when they see that we actually did that thing, I think it lets us connect with whoever's playing the game in a really profound way. And I say this because in games like Outer Wilds or in Tunic, whenever I do something that I say there's no way they did it and they do it, I think, man, I really want to go to the park and talk with this guy who made this game, because I feel like we are of the same blood. So yeah, that's a really big inspiration. Tunic and those sort of games, Outer Wilds too.
That's awesome. Those are all great games. Like I'm a huge fan of the Sam Barlow games myself, and I really, really appreciate the kindred spirits thing too. Because like I kind of felt that way of why I needed to interview you guys. 'Cause when I was playing the demo, like and it was like Puzzle 8, where then you had to go back. I don't want to spoil too much for the listeners because they absolutely should play it. There's I did put in the questions this part actually, where one of the image files gets changed. And when I saw that little detail, I was like, oh, that's so creepy and beautiful. Like, it's perfect. And the little hidden details that are in this game, I think, are just fantastic. Because I agree. I think details matter, and the details are great when they're done, especially in a video game, and they're hidden and things like that. And so, yeah, I guess a detail I do want to ask a bit about is there's obviously quite a strong theme of fishing and the angler bros and the angler trio. I call them the angler bros, but memories of fishing and things like that. So I guess I kind of want to ask each of you guys, do you fish? And if you do, what's your favorite fish to catch? So Juan Carlos, let's start with you, or Jose Carlos, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Just combined.
It's fine. I have gone fishing with my dad and some of his friends a couple times. I do feel like, and I don't have I feel like I was just there to kind of like, do the whole like son and father ritual. Like I wasn't like a huge fan of it. Like I was like mostly sick, like seasick for most of the trips. But I do think like, at least in the sense of the game, like we do think that it's all the fishing reference. We're strong believers of like the ride and how like a ride is such an important concept and metaphor for like even like bringing people together, or they can have different meanings, but like we believe that there's a clear symbolic meaning and why they, even though Halibut is not Guppy's father, like he does see him like as a fatherly figure, and it's because like they have shared they're really close, and they're like, I do believe like we all have we can have a bunch of like fatherly or motherly figures in our lives. It's just like it's how we create those bonds, and like the people that really listen to us, especially when growing up, can become like such a like a core part of like who we end up being, right? So we kind of like put all those feelings into those references into the game. But yeah,
It's cool. What about you, Rodolfo? Do you fish? Do you like to fish? And what do you like to catch if you do?
I think it's such an interesting, thing to question us about, specifically for the game. The themes of fishing and going back to the way that you use a computer and you put parts of you in it. Fishing is very much like Halibut's thing, but within the team, it's also like, I would say Juan Pablo's thing as well. Like, as a writer, obviously he's putting a lot of the things that he loves in the game. Personally, I've not gone fishing ever. I've never caught a fish, although I wish I did. I think it's a very fun thing. But maybe the Hylian trout would be my favorite fish to catch, which is an ocarina of time. Other than that, no other connection.
Well,
I do like fishing though.
Do you have a favorite fish to eat? Do you like eating fish?
Yeah, I do. I love eating fish. I would say my favorite fish to eat is the red snapper. There's a really good red snapper tostada in Tijuana, where we're from. That I really try to have every time I'm back there. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I bet that's delicious. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't ask you that, Jose Carlos. Do you like to eat fish as well? Do you have a favorite fish you like to eat?
A favorite fish to eat. I feel like probably tuna. I feel like poke. It's so delicious. Probably will say tuna. Yeah.
Yeah, it is delicious. Well, I guess to the fishermen of the team, Juan Pablo, what do you like to catch, and then what do you like to eat?
That's a beautiful way to put someone that hasn't caught a fish in his life. I'm really a really big fan of fishing because of what it entails. I've gone fishing twice. I've been really close to catching a fish both times, and I haven't done it. But the reason why fishing is such an important thing about the character and on the game right now, it's sort of a a way my dad and I used to bond with, and it's something like it's really special to me. And I would really like to go with my brother also to fishing, and we haven't been able to. But whenever we have like a really significant trip, I always say, "Man, we could have fished here." And they're like, I don't know about that, but yeah. So my favorite fish to eat, it's funny Rodolfo mentioned red snapper. I'm a really big fan of red snapper too, which in Mexico we call, well, we call it or pargo or huachinango. I really like the name huachinango. It's really funny. But yeah, red snapper. Also in Animal Crossing, for anyone that plays Animal Crossing, when we played on the GameCube, red snapper, 3,000 bells, a really good fish to sell. And that's why it always was in my mind. And I told my mom, "Look, I caught a red snapper," and she was like, "Is what chinango?" I was like, "Damn, she knows about the fish." And yeah, so that's a really special fish for me. And not specifically fish, I love eating clam chowder. So
Ooh.
in Seattle, man, you guys really make a good clam chowder. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, the clam chowder here is really, really good. And I guess that's a good segue to talk about shifting gears a little bit to Seattle and PAX. I'm so thankful and happy that I got to meet the two of you, at least at PAX. I did not get to... Juan Pablo, were you at PAX?
Yeah, I was there. I was 3 of the 4 days. On the 4th day, I got really sick, so I couldn't attend. But I don't know which day were you at PAX?
I was there on Sunday, and I wasn't there for too long, but I was thankful to get to see you guys. I saw that it was really cool that you guys got an actual computer from like the museum. Do you guys mind talking a little bit about that, about your setup and your booth at PAX?
We can talk about a little bit about it. So actually, when we started working on the game, like on 2023, at the end of it, because we were preparing for another local convention here in Seattle, the Seattle Indies Expo, that's happening actually alongside PAX, but like 2 blocks away from the convention center. That was like the first event that we actually got to like present, and we have like a really old version of the demo that's right now on Steam. At that point we were like thinking how we should prepare the booth, what kind of things should like bring people together, and we thought about having like an old computer because as you can see that's probably really into the vein of what the game is trying to be, and even I feel like it just captures the eye of people. It's just like eye candy, and people like are either intrigued about like not being familiar with like these old technology, but at the same time people that grew up with those old computers, like they just want to go and kind of like rekindle that feeling of using like a really old keyboard and mouse. So we wanted to do that, but at that point we couldn't get one. We were like even thinking about making like a cardboard computer at one time. And so for this year, thankfully, because so we got accepted for PAX Rising probably like almost like 2 months ahead of the convention. We have plenty of time this time to actually figure out how to like get like an old computer. We were like on thrift stores nearby here, like in the city, and we ended up going to these like old computer museum / store that sells them. Apparently, they're not as cheap as they were a couple years ago. Like I remember myself at one point in my household, we have like 3 of those, and we just like gave them up, or like we got like $10 for just recycling them. And nowadays they consider like retro computers, so like they cost a little bit more than the $10. But but yeah, I think like it was just a core challenge because it's really heavy, so we have to like actually put that all over the convention center. It was like the logistics were a little bit crazy, but not just bringing it up into the convention center, but like Rodolfo was working really hard to even make the game run on the old computer, which was like a whole adventure on its own. But yeah, at the end of the day, we do believe that it was like an eye catcher, and like a lot of people were like just they were passing by. They were like even though they didn't know about the game at all, like just looking at the old computer, like they make them curious, which was fun.
Yeah, I thought it was a really, really cool and beautiful touch, especially when you're talking about an ARPG or an ARG. You know what I mean? Because then it's like you feel like you're actually there in the basement checking out your uncle's computer. Yeah, like it's pretty amazing. Rodolfo, do you have any highlights of PAX that you can think of that you can remember?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I really enjoyed being able to share what we've built. By this point, like we've worked on the game for about a year, and like Carlos mentioned, we did have a demo that we worked on a couple months last year at Seattle Indies Expo, and now we felt like way more prepared and ready to really talk about what the game's about, where it's going, our inspirations. I feel like for me, highlight was just seeing the sheer amount of people that were interested in the game that we're making. I don't know if sorry, my internet connection seems to be not very stable, but I'll keep talking. I don't know, just seeing people like walking by and saying like, oh my god, they have an old computer, and how did they get the game to run there? It's not that I didn't actually build the game for like an old OS or anything. It was just a monitor. But even seeing like the excitement of like getting to use all that, and like I also really like seeing people like coming back days later and bringing friends and saying like, this is the game I was telling you about, it's Desktop Explorer, and it's this and this and that. And I always told them like, oh, thank you for pitching my own game to other people. I don't know, I thought it was nice. But my definite highlight was seeing people like collaborate as they were solving the puzzles. Like I always told them like collaboration is encouraged, because mostly people were coming in groups to play the game, and it's like in a single player experience, people think like, okay, I'm just gonna stand on the sidelines and just watch. But it's like no, people really benefit from different points of view when they're playing the game, and I love that about our game, because that's the way I like to play games as well. Growing up with Juan Pablo, it's like when we're playing a single player game, it's not just me or him, we're a team solving the game together. So yeah, that was probably my favorite thing.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I actually did not know until after PAX that you guys had an entire separate kind of demo that was a part of PAX that was unique to PAX, which I think is so cool and really a smart call. Is that what the second user, the Catito user was? Or not I'm thinking Catito. It's Masachio?
Masachio.
Yeah. Who is that? Who is that cat?
So actually, on the demo right now that's on Steam, we used the photo of my cat, which is my cat Wilson. But yeah, it's sort of representing the second user. But on the more updated version, we used a different image because of some stuff that needed to happen. But yeah, at least right now there's a cameo of my cat, which is Wilson, my best friend here in my home. But
That's so cute. Do you have any highlights from PAX, Juan Pablo?
Yeah. So there's we built this sort of not only was the demo special for PAX, we also had like a hidden secret, which was like an ARG that you found clues playing the demo, but then you can go like on your free time to build like this sort of big riddle separate from the game on your own time. And that was like a really big thing for us. But we thought there's no way someone's gonna solve this because it was a little bit too hard. Well, that was my personal feelings about it. And the first day, this guy comes over and finds the clue and asks me about it. So I'm thinking I'm gonna be like really careful with this. I'm just gonna tell him, yeah, there's a clue and there's an ARG. Good luck. He comes back like 3 hours later, having solved everything. And I was like, that's not possible. It was so hard. And he shows me all. And he says that he liked it so much, he went like out of the convention center with a friend, solved it like for 3 hours, and then came back. And I thought, not only is that person so beautiful for doing that, it's also like what I would have done. So we took a picture with him, and it was like really, really cute. And yeah, I think that's my biggest highlight. It was a really beautiful thing finding people that really are passionate about puzzles, because we are all very passionate about that. So yeah, again, kindred spirits.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about PAX itself, right? Is I feel like it's such a wonderful convention for kindred spirits, where you really can connect with a whole bunch of people like that. That's so awesome too. That like, yeah, somebody left and then solved it, and you're like, they're not gonna solve this, and completely dead. I guess that's a good leads into my next question, which is like, how has reception been? I've noticed that your guys' Discord's been popping off. I mean, Pizarro's about to get some new emotes, so that's exciting. But how has the reception been so far?
So it is funny that you say so, because at one moment, so I feel like over the last year we have like steadily getting people into the Discord, and I feel like again, we even though it can seem like the game is kind of like a niche game. Like we do believe that there's a market for it, and we believe that there's a lot of people that actually really enjoy this type of games. So we started seeing people coming up over packs, like actually a bunch of people, like way more than we normally have started joining. And so I literally was so excited, and I was like, I had the phrase like, "Oh, this server just exploded." And then Rodolfo was like, he actually thought that something broke on Discord. He was like,
Yeah.
oh, like in the middle of the night, just like panicking because like, what did it broke or what happened? It was just me like being, metaphoric about people joining and um, I don't think that it's been really exciting. I feel like it feels like, at least for me, I was telling this to Rodolfo the other day. Like, I feel like we all come from an age where, like, when I was like in middle school, like I was always like a really nerd. I always loved video games, like anime and all that stuff. And it was weird because I feel like there was a lot of things that I couldn't like be like too open about because that would be like killing myself socially. And I feel like at some point like I kind of like repress like being too open about like talking about those things. And I feel like making a game or like even making like any creative endeavor, it just like it puts you on a like a at a vulnerable state because you're kind of like sharing who you are, and you like can share like or making something that you really care and believe in. And so just seeing people join the Discord and be like telling us that they really enjoy the game, that like they want to know more, it just have like recontextualize my ideas, and just like I'm having a lot of fun, and I feel like it's great, and like it encourages the idea that we're doing something good, because at the beginning I feel like that's something that's really hard. Like obviously we all believe in the idea, but like us as programmers, and Rodolfo and I myself, we always have this joke about like we have probably seen the login screen like a million times, and we're always like, oh, this looks ugly, or oh, you know what, like we're like overthinking ourselves, and like maybe this is not as fun, or maybe we can change this. We're like constantly having this kind of like trouble ideas because like we have seen these so many times. Like we're it's normalized in our minds, but like seeing people like saying it like as you like saying like, oh, I would really enjoy it, like the aesthetic is nice, we do really feel that feeling of immersion. I feel like that means the world to us, and like that encourages the idea that we're doing something good and we want to keep doing it.
I think you guys are on such a fantastic path, and like it's so great. Like the immersion's fantastic. I don't know how you could ever get sick of that beautiful theme music as well, by the way, but the music is fantastic. But I mean, was there kind of a pivotal point since you guys have known each other for so long and grew up kind of together, is what it sounds like, that was there a moment where you were like, oh yeah, we are going to make this? And like as the idea was forming for Desktop Explorer.
That's, I mean, I'm sure there is. It's just, Jose Carlos and I have collaborated for so many years at this point, and in so many things. Like we've been in bands together, we've worked together, and then we met again in Seattle. Kind of like gone our separate ways, but then again, like we're still like trying to do things creatively with each other. And I remember, back in pandemic days, I was not having a good time. I was really not doing great. But I always had this like shared love for video games and art with Jose Carlos. And so when he approached me and said, hey, I want to really take this seriously and build games, let's join a game jam. At the beginning, I wasn't very convinced, honestly. As much as I love games and I really feel like this is what I should be doing with my life, for sure. At that moment, I was like, yeah, I don't know, like it takes a lot of time. I'm not feeling well. Things are not going well for me right now. But he pushed really hard. to get that happening. And I actually didn't even like do any programming on that first game that we made. I literally just did like art, backgrounds, and some assets. But seeing something come out of that, like an actual game that tells a personal story, as small as it was, and as, you know, a little impact that it could have. Like for us, it's a very personal project and a very, I don't know, a beautiful thing that we made, you know, in just the span of a weekend, and like super rushed and everything. But like that's the moment where I said, okay, well, I think, you know, not for Desktop Explorer, but as makers of games, I guess that was the moment that really clicked for me, where I was like, there's a future in this, and I don't know where it's gonna go. At the time, you know, I never imagined opening up a studio or building a company or doing anything like that. But I think that was the moment, and I've never doubted it ever since.
That's awesome. Jose Carlos, was there a moment for you where you were like, Desktop Explorer, I'm making this?
So it is fun because before 6 last year, we wanted to make a demo, and I feel like when we were actually ongoing on 6, like that was the moment where like we saw they were like the first people that play. Of course, we have like some friends and like some people that help us like play test internally, but like that was the first kind of like test for the game to see like if there was like a public for the game, or like people find it interesting, and like what were like the overall reception of it. And we had a lot of great feedback there. Even like there were like some publishers that like even approached us and gave us cars, and suddenly was like so serious. And at that point, there was no recurrent dream, there was no company at all. It was just like us trying to make something. And the moment that publishers started talking with us and telling us like, oh, what's your company's name? And we're like, we don't have a company, we're just like two dudes trying to make something. It started to get seriously pretty quickly, and it was like, okay, if we want to do this, I mean, we need, you know, put things in order. And yeah, I mean, I feel like for me around those days after 6, it was like, okay, I don't care how much time this takes. Like like it's just like a snowball. Like just like start getting traction, start getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it got to a point where I was like, these guys, we got to release the game. Like there's no way I'm not doing this at this point. So that's probably for me. Yeah.
Nice. And then when, like, how long until Juan Pablo you were brought on, and like when was kind of your moment where you were like, yeah, I'm releasing all this story?
Well, I started helping with the game when we started working on the demo, right, Rodolfo? So it's funny because at that time, and I don't know if this is too personal, Rodolfo, but some sort of like pivotal moment also for us was being let go of our jobs. So that's that was a really important moment because we're both programmers, and I was really struggling to find work. And at first, when Rodolfo also was let off, we were like really on overdrive trying to go through all the interviews and trying to find a job. And no matter how good we did, no matter how much we studied, we couldn't land a job. And I don't know if this was like blind hope, but I told my brother, like, maybe it's a signal, maybe it's not that we suck. So we tried to focus all of our like efforts on this project, and I think that really shows, but also felt natural. So yeah, that's kind of the that's what I would call the pivotal point also.
It was a sign. It was Pizarro being like, hey,
Yeah.
work on this folder instead of that one, you know?
Yep.
You guys definitely don't suck. You're killing it. Like, I think that this is really awesome, what you guys have made and the direction that you guys are going to and stuff. That, I mean, I was going to ask if you guys have made other projects in the past, but it sounds like not exactly, right? Or at least not together. Or have you made other projects in the past?
I feel like mostly game jams. I think that's how it started again during the pandemic. Like I was still trying to make like a career shift for like regular programmer into like a game maker. And we started with small things. We have like an HIO page, and we have a bunch of stuff that I hope people don't look that up because I'll be ashamed. But yeah, I feel like Desktop Explorer is the first like full game that we have, you know, adventures ourselves to making.
Nice. I think at this point, all I have left actually is some questions from our listeners that did ask on DLG if they have any questions for you guys. And one of them from one of our users, Adam, he asked if you guys are going to be doing potentially other operating system simulations in the future, or maybe making like a mobile operating system in the future.
That's a great question. Because, things like future games, we even talked about, DLC, the possibility of something like that. And the frameworks that we've built for Desktop Explorer for sure could be used in different contexts for different OSs or even mobile phones or stuff like that. We've toyed with the idea in our heads, but right now it's not like we're really focusing on trying to get Desktop Explorer out and like really finishing that project. I can't say no, it'll never happen. And we do love this medium. I don't think we've even really mentioned it much in this call, but we like to call it like interface drama. So it's interface based gameplay that weaves a narrative through, and I personally love that genre, if you could call it a genre. But Her Story, Emily Is Away, stuff like that. And that's kind of like what those games have gone to as well. Like early internet or like mid 2000s, stuff like that. So there's definitely a possibility because we do love it. However, I can't really promise anything.
That's totally fair. Yeah, focus on the project and the operating system you have at hand. We had another listener, Zap, who had asked about what your childhood operating system was and how it inspired the game, but I think we definitely covered that. Windows 95 for both you two and Juan Pablo 98. And so that's great. I guess the only other question I have is, which, I mean, if you don't know, that's totally fine. I feel like I have to ask it, though. When can we expect a full release, or I guess an update, I suppose? We want more. That's what it is. The listeners and myself want more.
So we have definitely have talks about having an updated version of the demo, because actually after PAX we saw a bunch of people playing the demo, so you can expect that we're gonna be updating the demo soonish. But for the full release of the game, we don't have a date yet, but like we're thinking that probably like late next year, beginning of 2026. That's kind of like where our minds are at the moment.
Okay, awesome. Well, I definitely want to thank you guys once again for visiting, hanging out with me. 3 out of 4 of us being in Seattle. Could have gotten a coffee. I'm sorry. But thank you so much too for answering my questions and talking about Desktop Explorer. I personally think that this game is absolutely amazing. Like the details and what you guys have talked about in the project, and I think the camaraderie that is between this team. I personally feel like you can feel it, especially given that it is so cohesive. And like I said, the little details, even starting and booting up the game, and it's having that loud fan sound like you actually would in like a computer that from that time is fantastic. All the little details. So I definitely recommend all of the listeners listening now to go check out Desktop Explorer on Steam and to check out the demo and keep an eye open for when it is released in the end of next year, 2026.
Hey everyone, Christian here. You are listening to the music of Desktop Explorer. A bit creepy, isn't it? I hope you enjoyed this awesome interview that Amanda did with this great team, and we want to make interviews a regular part of our show and what we release to you guys. If you have suggestions or if you like this episode, stop by the Discord and let us know. See you soon.